After the divorce, I completely vanished from Rachel's life. Everyone thought I couldn't live without her, betting how long it'd take for me to crawl back. Rachel gave a mocking laugh. A few days? 3 minutes. Jackson's just a loser. He's got no money and no parents. One call from me, and he'd come running back like a puppy. Later, Rachel called me a bunch of times, but I never picked up. She freaked out and went nuts trying to find me. 3 years later, I ran into her at a party. The person who'd always been so proud had tears in her eyes the moment she saw me. She held on to me tightly. After the divorce, she changed the house locks and I left some stuff there. Just when I found her, I stumbled upon this scene. In a private room, friends of ours were betting on how long it'd take for me to come back. Rachel gave her mocking laugh again. A few days? 3 minutes. Jackson's a loser. Can't make money, no parents. One call and he'd come running back like a dog. Then she took off her fancy watch and tossed it on the table, oozing confidence. He'll be begging to remarry me in no time. Someone even bet he wouldn't come back. Ha, they overestimated Jackson. He can't survive without me. Everyone cheered, and her friend Laura said, "No plans to remarry? Jackson's been into you for ages. Don't act rashly." Before Rachel could answer, someone cut in. "No way. Rachel never liked Jackson. He wouldn't stop clinging to her. Average looks, average body. Lost his parents a couple years ago. No way he's good enough for Rachel. Even if he begged on his knees, Rachel wouldn't remarry. Besides," the guy smirked at Harry, who was sitting beside Rachel. "With her heart's true person back, Jackson's nothing." Their sneers stung me. I clenched my fists trying to keep it together. After we got married, I asked Rachel about Harry once. She just shrugged it off with a smile and said, "It's all in the past. The present's what matters." I didn't dig deeper, didn't give it much thought, until Harry came back 6 months ago, and she threw him a welcome party. That night, she didn't come home. Then there was a second time, a third, and countless others. In the room, everyone chatted loudly. Rachel listened, relaxed with a faint smile. She occasionally joined in but never denied anything. Harry noticed and chimed in with his charming voice. "Y'all are terrible talking about someone behind their back. Besides, Jackson didn't do anything wrong. He just loved Rachel too much. Too bad Rachel loves me. Even after all these years, I never expected her to wait for me." His eyes were soft as he looked at Rachel, full of affection. Rachel was moved too. Marrying Jackson was to please my family. I've been waiting for someone. Everyone knew who she meant. My heart finally broke completely. I'd always sensed Rachel's indifference, but couldn't pinpoint it. She never forgot birthdays or anniversaries and always gave gifts. After arguments, she'd be the first to make amends. I thought it was love, but turns out it was because there wasn't any. 5 years of marriage and she was just acting. I was the one who was deluding myself. Heart shattered, I let go of my scarred hands and turned to leave. But Laura, stepping out of the restroom, called out, "Jackson, why didn't you say anything? Come on in." I shook my head. "No, it's not right." "Why not?" Rachel heard and came out. She crossed her arms and gave me a look. "You're here for me, so why leave without saying anything?" Against her composure, my tear-streaked face seemed pathetic. Love works like that. The loved one always acts recklessly. That's why she could hurt me so freely, trampling my dignity. People began drifting out of the room, eyes lingering on me meanly, especially Harry, who viewed me like a winner looking down on a loser. "Rachel, don't be so harsh on Jackson. He must be sad after being dumped. Speak nicely to him." Rachel lovingly replied, "All right." Everyone chuckled. I suddenly regretted coming to see Rachel today. Wiping my tears, I steadied my voice. "Rachel changed the house code, and I left some things. That's why I came. But forget it, I don't need them. Sorry for bothering you, goodbye." "Wait." Harry stepped closer, putting an arm around my shoulder, acting friendly. "Rachel still has things to say. You were married. She may like me now, but you've come, so things should be cleared up. Oh, by the way, you're over Rachel, right?" I wasn't sure what he was getting at, until he quipped, smiling, Divorced means no more bothering Rachel. Okay? I get jealous. Jackson, you wouldn't come between us, would you? His words were like daggers. Harry was always like that. Angrily, I shrugged him off. He turned it around, though. Rachel and I got married first. He stole her, yet he's telling me not to bother her. Stop talking nonsense. Before I could continue, Harry stumbled, hitting the wall dramatically. I froze, staring at my hand. I hadn't pushed hard. Jackson, what are you doing? Rachel's voice was furious as she rushed past me to help Harry. The push made me stagger backward, losing my balance. I fell down the stairs. After a whirlwind of chaos, I felt dizzy, and my whole body ached. Right then, Rachel supported Harry as they came down from upstairs. Her eyes were cold. You made your bed, now lie in it, she said. You've done everything possible to bully Harry. Now you're even using self-harm? Jackson, we're divorced. If you have any decency, stop bothering me. Harry's eyes reddened and he weakly said, It's okay, Rachel. Jackson's just mad I took you away. That's why he... Before he could finish, Harry started coughing again. Rachel looked pained, and the disdain in her eyes toward me grew a bit more. Even our friends around were frowning. With just a few words, Harry managed to turn everyone against me. But I didn't have time for that. My stomach hurt like hell. I reached out, barely grabbing onto Rachel's pants. Rachel, my stomach hurts. Take me to the hospital, call 911. Rachel looked concerned and frowned as she asked, Your stomach hurts? Did you hit it somewhere? Ugh. Cough, I said, Rachel, my chest feels tight, and my ankle hurts too. Sigh, Rachel, will it affect my marathon next month? Suddenly, Harry's weak voice drew Rachel's attention back to him. Rachel's demeanor changed instantly. She anxiously said, It won't, I promise. I'll take you to the hospital right now. And what about me? I gripped her pants tightly, hoping she'd look back at me. But Rachel shook me off harshly. She rushed out, holding on to Harry. I blurredly watched her figure recede, muttering, Rachel, I hate you. Before Harry returned to the country, there were no issues between me and Rachel. When she didn't come home all night, she said it was because work was hectic. I understood and urged her to take care of herself. Then one day, I called Rachel, and a calm male voice answered. He said, Hello? Are you Rachel's assistant? Sorry, she's had too much to drink. She's here with me. Can you bring some hangover soup? A sharp pain stabbed my heart. I'd never been in such a situation. I didn't know how to react. An internal battle raged between my inner devil and angel. One told me to trust Rachel. The other suggested she'd done something wrong. Eventually, I brought the hangover soup to the given address. The door was ajar. I lightly pushed it open and stood frozen at what I saw inside. Rachel leaned against Harry, holding his hand, murmuring repeatedly, Harry, you're back. You finally came back. I've waited so long for you. You're finally back. All these years I thought I forgot you. But the moment I saw you, I realized I still like you. Harry looked a bit sad. Don't talk nonsense. Rachel, you're married. We're in the past. His voice got hoarse by the end. Rachel looked at him with concern, touched his cheek, and seriously said, It's okay. I can divorce and marry you. As long as you agree, I'll divorce immediately. Their heartfelt exchange made me seem like the villain breaking up their love. Yet I had no idea Rachel still liked Harry. When we got married, she said it was all in the past. How foolish I was, deceived so easily. I opened my eyes, and tears rolled down my cheeks. Mom and Dad, I miss you. My stomach felt burning from hunger. I checked my phone. It was 8:15 p.m. I slept an entire day away. No one came to see me or comfort me. I opened my phone, and there were strings of photos from Harry. All of them were of Rachel. In a video, Harry said understandingly, Maybe you should check on Jackson. He seems hurt too. Rachel's smiling face dropped immediately, like someone owed her $1 million. She stirred the porridge impatiently and fed Harry. Why bring him up? What bad luck. I regret marrying such a vile man. Harry, you're too kind. A dull ache hit my heart. The wounds Rachel gave me hadn't healed yet. I got out of bed and stumbled through the discharge paperwork, leaving the hospital decisively. I got a new bank card and called Grandma and Grandpa. When they heard about my divorce, Grandma burst into tears, saying, "My child, come back to Grandma." I replied, "Okay." Aunt had moved to the States years ago to help with the new baby, so Grandma and Grandpa went too. They've been living abroad all these years. Packed my bags and bought a flight ticket. I left North City without a second thought. As I boarded the plane, Rachel's face popped into my mind. I chuckled to myself. They'd probably be thrilled to know I left. At that moment, back in the hospital, Rachel frowned at the empty room. She stopped a passing nurse to ask, "Where's the patient from bed 23? Jackson." The nurse frowned, thinking for a moment. "Oh, he was discharged. Left on the third day." "Who are you?" The nurse glanced Rachel up and down and asked, "Are you his family?" "I'm his wife," Rachel blurted out, then realized her mistake. She meant to fix it, but the nurse's next words stopped her. "You are really irresponsible. Mr. Jackson's health was already poor. He needed careful attention. This time he suffered severe lower body trauma, causing irreversible damage. We performed emergency surgery to save his life. He needed a lot of rest, yet he left on day 3. You should take better care of him, make sure he looks after himself." The nurse left after speaking. Rachel stood there, stunned. Jackson, why, how could she have allowed it? With that, she hurriedly dialed Jackson's number. "Sorry, the number you've dialed is currently unavailable." Again and again she called, but the call just wouldn't go through. Rachel, frustrated, pounded the wall with her fist. "Damn it, pick up the phone." With no answer, Rachel had no choice but to wander around looking for Jackson. Home? Nope. The old house? Nope. She checked all of Jackson's usual hangouts and even reached out to his old friends. But no one had any clue about Jackson's whereabouts. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Whispers of doubt crept in. Jackson's pretty vulnerable. Could he have done something drastic? Panic seized Rachel's heart. She screamed in denial. No way. Jackson would never do that. But the more she thought about it, the more anxious she became. When his parents died in a car accident, he fell into depression. It's not like it couldn't happen again. Just then, there was a sound at the door, and hope flickered in Rachel's eyes. "Jackson, did you come back?" She rushed forward only to see Harry instead. Her heart sank. It's not him. Harry, seeing Rachel in this state, was fuming. "Didn't you divorce him? Why do you even care whether he's alive or dead?" Rachel didn't have an answer. She thought maybe Jackson wasn't that important anymore. But since he disappeared, she started to miss him a bit. 3 years later, I'm married now in the US and have a lovely son with my wife, close to turning 2. My wife's childhood friend is getting married in our hometown, so the 3 of us flew back to Northern City. After we got off the plane, she dropped me and our son at home, then hurriedly showered, ate, and got ready for work. I pretended to be mad, holding our son and saying, "What's more important, work or family? You've just been so busy. Are you spending quality time with Jimmy and me today?" Annie chuckled, pulled my face close to kiss my brow, and picked up our son from my arms. "Honey, after these 2 days, I'll have all the time to spend with you and our little one. I promise." She's a workaholic. She loves her job, our little family, and me and our son. She balances work and home pretty well, and I get it. I just wanted her to hang out with me a bit in Northern City. That's all. All right, go on, take care. Okay, I'll be back late, so don't wait up. The afternoon was rather dull, so I took my son for a walk and dined at a restaurant I used to love. Unexpectedly, I ran into Laura there. Our son was fussy, so I just nodded at her and carried him home. Behind me, Laura scratched her head. "Jackson's not dead. That's it. I'm calling Rachel." "Hey, Rachel, I just saw Jackson." Rachel laughed sarcastically. "Stop teasing, he's been gone for a long time." Laura got anxious. "No, really, I just saw him, and he had a little boy with him. If he were alive, why wouldn't he come looking for me? Besides, I've been searching for him for 3 years, and nothing." Rachel hung up, cynical and resigned. Sipping on her drink, she thought about how much she wanted to see Jackson again. The next day, Early morning, Annie and I took our son to the wedding, bearing gifts and good wishes. My wife was quickly whisked away by the bride for a chat, leaving me in the groom's room with our son. The place was bustling with people. The groomsmen, seeing Jimmy and me, took turns playing with him so I could get a break. Even the groom, once ready, came over. Wow, Jimmy's such a handsome little guy and so well behaved. Let me hold him, and who knows, maybe I'll have one just like him. I laughed. Jimmy looked wide-eyed at the groom, then burst out laughing, kicking in the groom's arms while babbling away. As the ceremony approached, the room filled up, making Jimmy restless. Afraid he might start crying, I took him outside for some fresh air. Jackson. I heard someone calling me from the hallway. I turned, seeing a sea of faces, but didn't know who it was, so I kept moving forward with Jimmy in my arms, until someone grabbed my shoulder. Jackson. I turned and locked eyes with Rachel. She was much thinner now, her eyes red as she stared at me, her voice trembling. You're not dead? Then why didn't you come back? Where have you been these past 3 years? Her gaze fell on my son, and her grip on my fingers tightened instantly. Her voice shook. Is he mine? Memories flashed through my mind, feeling both familiar and distant. Rachel's expression was complex, a mix of sadness, surprise, shock, and joy. I studied her face, intrigued. Rachel was always so composed, like she was in control and handled everything between us so rationally and calmly. But now her eyes were red, and her composure was gone. I pushed her hand away, politely and distantly. No, it's been a long time, Rachel. I'm married now, so please don't grab me like this in public. After saying this, I stepped back with my son. Noticing my cold demeanor, Rachel's face stiffened, and she let out a bitter laugh. Come on, Jackson, you left without a word to anyone. Not to get back at me? I've been looking for you for 3 years. Is this enough for you? This is the child we lost, right? They said we couldn't have children, but I couldn't believe it. How could you bear to give up our child? Now that you're back, let's take care of him together. She looked tenderly at Jimmy, eyes full of affection. Bringing up the child we lost, my heart ached. At the same time, I was shocked by her audacity. She thought I'd cut off ties and moved abroad to punish her. How could she think that? Even now, Rachel thought I was still the Jackson who once loved her to the core. For Rachel, I kept a straight face and growled at her, no niceties at all. Are you deaf? I'm married now. If you're sick, get help. Don't just talk nonsense around here. Rachel was stunned for a moment. In that split second, I turned around to leave. But she chased after me. How can that be? Jackson, explain yourself. Are you really married? Before I could answer, Annie appeared behind us. She wrapped an arm around my shoulder, pulling me and our son close, and pushed Rachel away with her other hand. Her entire vibe was ice cold. Stay away from my husband and son. Rachel impatiently shook her off, losing her patience. Who are you? What are you doing? Smack. I couldn't hold back anymore. I raised my hand and slapped Rachel. She seemed like she'd lost her mind, refusing to listen to reason, just obsessed with her own thoughts. After the slap, Rachel finally quieted down. She turned her head, disbelief in her eyes as she looked at me, a bit hurt. You hit me? I shook out my numb hand and handed our son to Annie. I said seriously and firmly, I'll say it one more time. Rachel, I'm married. The person beside me is my wife. In the future, don't speak nonsense. Stop disrupting my life. As soon as the wedding banquet ended, Annie and I headed home. On the way, the mood was quite heavy. I watched Annie's expressionless face, wanting to speak several times, but unsure of what to say. Once we got home, she pushed me against the door. Desperate, urgent kisses came down on me, and I had no choice but to endure them. Soft whimpers slipped out of my mouth. I grabbed Annie's wandering hands, breathless as I explained. There's nothing between me and her. I know. Seriously, nothing. I can tell you everything. Annie paused for a moment, propping herself up and pulling at the scarf around her neck. Her voice was husky. No need to explain. Just enjoy what's coming next. I drifted into a confusing sleep. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. Rubbing my messed up hair, I got up and went downstairs, catching Annie feeding the baby. Jimmy wasn't keen on the food, spitting it out as he ate. Annie was patient, gently coaxing him and carefully wiping his chin. I once imagined this scene. Back then, full of hopes and dreams about love, I married Rachel. 3 years ago, that dream shattered. I thought life would just go on like that until I met Annie. She's a friend of my aunt's. When I first arrived in the States, my aunt was busy and asked Annie to pick me up. I was in a bad mood that day. On the plane, I dreamt of a little boy whose face I couldn't see, dressed in a tiny suit. He said to me, "Dad and Mom don't love each other anymore. Dad, I'll come find you again next time." After landing, I just cried and cried. Annie didn't say a word, handing me tissues while driving. She later told my aunt and grandma about it. Seeing me so down, my aunt tried to match Annie and me. I wasn't interested at first, but my aunt said, "Are you never going to get married?" Rachel was a jerk, but that doesn't mean all women are bad. She lowered her voice. "Jackson, listen to Auntie. The hurt from one woman can be healed by another. Annie might be a bit older, but she's caring. Give it a try, don't stay stuck in the past forever." She smiled meaningfully as she said that. I was confused, feeling there was more to her words. So, half-willingly, I gave it a shot. To my surprise, I found that calm Annie suited me more than Rachel did. Then, we confirmed our relationship, I proposed, and we got married. At the wedding, my aunt drank a bit too much and held my hand. "Jackson, you're so confused. I wanted you to move on, not dive right back in." I glanced at Annie, who was standing by, and gave a sheepish smile. Annie's dark eyes glimmered, her mouth curling into a smile as she helped my aunt up. "Auntie, I promise I'll take good care of Jackson." Rachel somehow got her hands on my phone number. When I answered her call, I wasn't prepared. "Hello, who is this?" Silence from the other side. "It's Rachel." I hung up the phone without a second thought. After that, the calls came one after another, leaving me feeling frustrated. "What do you want from me?" Rachel's voice sounded almost pleading. "I don't want anything. I just want to talk to you. Jackson, where have you been all these years? I miss you. Ever since you left, I can't forget you. I still live in what was once our home, stuck in the past. Come back, Jackson." Something about her words felt familiarity. Thinking back, when Harry came back home, she said the same stuff to him. Copy and paste. Rachel's love felt cheap. I scoffed. "If you're sick, see a doctor. Leave delusions untreated, and it'll turn into a real problem. I'm happy now. Please don't disturb my life anymore. Don't you remember what you said during the divorce?" Rachel faltered for a moment. In a soft voice, she asked, "Are you really married to her?" "Yeah." "When?" 2 years ago." 2 years, huh? Rachel let out a self-mocking laugh. "I searched for you in our country for 3 years. And in less than a year, you created a new family, got married and had a kid, leaving me alone in pain. Jackson." Her voice grew agitated from the other end. She accused, "Are you really that heartless? I spent 3 whole years searching. 3 years. Every day I'm filled with longing, living in constant fear, guilt almost drowning me. I thought you couldn't take it anymore. That moment when you appeared before me again, I was overjoyed. I finally saw you again, but you went and married someone else and had a child. Now you're living a blissful life, so what about me? Jackson, what am I supposed to do? How do I not disturb you?" I stayed silent for half a minute. Fate is truly unpredictable. I was once deep in a pit, barely climbing out by the skin of my teeth. And now the person who pushed me down there is at the bottom pleading, asking me to pull her up. I sighed and hung up the phone without saying a word, feeling a bit troubled inside. I texted Annie, "Once you're done with work, let's go home." She quickly replied, "Okay." After hanging up, Rachel bombarded me with messages. She even followed me to my apartment building. Seeing her stubborn figure, I sighed. It wouldn't look good if Annie saw her, so I decided to meet up with her at a nearby coffee shop. Rachel left before I did. When I got there, I only saw Harry. He looked annoyed, sitting there. When he saw me, he bluntly spoke, Jackson, you're like a ghost that won't leave. He looked me up and down like a scanner. Maybe noticing my sharp outfit, Harry sneered. You're really something. Since you couldn't beat me, you faked your death and left the country. Rachel's been thinking about you all these years, and I thought you were so innocent. I couldn't help but smile sarcastically. If it weren't for him, my divorce wouldn't have been so freaking painful. And now he's all high and mighty, blaming me? Harry, I'm married now. You don't need to be so hostile toward me. Where's Rachel? He squinted, thinking. Then his eyes sharpened. Who's to say you're not just trying to upset Rachel? Bringing your kid around where she'd be, catching her attention and playing aloof. Are you not seeking revenge? I gave him a cold look. Same old trick from 3 years ago. Back then, he brought some girlfriend around, and it made Rachel jealous. In the end, Rachel couldn't stand it and marked her territory. Bright red lipstick marks, still etched in my mind. A dirty heart sees everything as dirty. I mocked. Not every woman is precious. I don't give a damn about trash like Rachel. You don't have to watch me like a hawk. You're giving Rachel too much credit. Jackson. A broken voice sounded behind me. I turned around to see Rachel there, unnoticed. She changed her outfit, hair neatly tied back, suit pressed, looking like she dressed up for this. But she was pale. She seemed pitiable. Just as I was about to speak, Harry grabbed my wrist. He instantly turned white, gasping. Jackson. Please, Jackson, give Rachel back to me. We've loved each other for years. If it weren't for you, we would have been together by now. We're engaged and getting married next month on the 18th. Couldn't you have come back any other time than now? I know you hate me, but I must do this, because seeing you pains me, and the doctor said I shouldn't get worked up. For my health's sake, please let her go. The cafe was quiet, Harry's moan attracting everyone's attention. I frowned deeply, confused about his game. The next second, he grabbed my hand and screamed, falling backward. Same old move, but this time I caught him. His scream stopped abruptly as a hint of panic crossed Harry's face. He struggled. Losing patience, I let go and kicked him hard in the shin. I shouted, I already said whoever wants that trash can have her. Stop bothering me. Harry, in pain, lost balance and fell frog-like to the ground. He curled up, covering his chest, looking pathetically at Rachel. Rachel, I hurt. I'm in so much pain. Rachel stepped forward. But she only shielded me. She said coldly, 3 years ago, you used this trick to make me make an irrecoverable mistake. Now, I won't repeat it. Stop acting, Harry. Your so-called chest pain is just a ploy for sympathy. Let's go. Harry's eyes widened in disbelief, seemingly unable to believe Rachel's coldness, crying out desperately, Rachel, you can't do this to me. Rachel, I've given you everything. You can't treat me this way. Rachel. His cries were so pathetic. I glanced back. Harry looked utterly defeated, lying on the ground with no dignity left. I felt a rush of mockery rise inside. Evil deeds always backfire. The boomerang from 3 years ago had now hit Harry hard. Outside the cafe, Rachel's hands at her sides twitched slightly. Why didn't you tell me about your injury? If you told me then, maybe we wouldn't have divorced. We might have had a chance. Her words made me laugh. What chance? Seeing my smile, Rachel seemed lost. She softly rebuked. I had a right to know. You don't deserve to. Back then, I was disheartened and Rachel and I were also in a cold war. The last intimacy we had was when Rachel, drunk, came to me in our room, murmuring, Baby, I'm sorry, don't ignore me. We'll live well, really well. That softened my cold heart. I thought maybe we'd turn a corner. Until that night, I saw the lipstick marks on Harry's neck. I realized Rachel was just jealous. Having nowhere to vent, she came back to me. That moment was a mix of emotions. It was from then on I was resolute about the divorce. 3 years ago, the night I went to get my key to move stuff, you shoved me down the stairs for Harry. I was so dizzy. My stomach hurt. I held on to your pants, begging for you to take me to the hospital. And what did you do? You helped Harry with his sore foot, hurriedly leaving. You only cared if his foot would heal in time for his marathon. Did you even consider my situation? In the end, a passerby called 911 for me. Rachel's face turned pale as she suddenly dropped her head. Her eyes blinked frantically. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Finally, she looked up with red eyes. I'm sorry, Jackson. I didn't realize it would be that serious. The words felt hollow and couldn't undo the damage done. In the end, Rachel remained silent, which was probably for the best. Back then, with how obsessed she was with Harry, she would have thought I was just using my injuries to get her attention, even if she knew how badly I was hurt. That's not the life I want. It's all in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. Rachel, you weren't a good wife, and you're not fit to be a mother. My wife now is far more competent than you ever were. If there's nothing else, let's leave it at that. Don't disturb my life anymore. Rachel's eyes had a hint of reluctance, but she had no reason to stop me. She could only watch as I walked away. After a few steps, I turned back, looking straight at her. There was a flicker of hope in Rachel's eyes. I gave a small, forgiving smile. I will never forgive you, Rachel. This is goodbye forever. Rachel's last words came with the wind. Jackson, I wish you happiness. I will be happy. When I got home, Annie was already back from work. She was playing on the carpet with Jimmy. As I walked in, she glanced at me briefly, said nothing, but there was a bit of unspoken hurt in her eyes. Jimmy saw me and immediately grinned, reaching out for Daddy. I picked him up, sitting next to Annie. What's up? Are you mad? I asked. Annie shook her head. No. After a pause, she said seriously, Jackson, we're married now. I'm your wife. You can tell me anything. Annie rarely gets this serious. I remembered her only talking like this when she scolded our son for misbehavior. It hit me immediately. Annie was upset. Upset that I met Rachel alone. I handed Jimmy to the nanny and pulled Annie into my arms. Don't be mad, baby. I went to meet her to clear things up, and I didn't expect her to be so clingy, trying to disrupt us. I didn't tell you because you were at work, and I could handle it alone. It's all settled now. She won't bother us again. Annie's expression softened a bit after a few comforting words. I knew she was bothered by Rachel's presence, so I spoke openly. Do you want to hear about my past with Rachel? Annie only knew I'd been married before and was hurt, but she didn't know the details. She's a gentle person, doesn't pry if I don't bring it up. When I moved to the States, I've been avoiding that part of my life. And as happiness came, I honestly forgot about it. I cherish my relationship with Annie and don't want anything to come between us. After hearing everything, Annie was silent for a while. Anger flared in her eyes. Shit, she's such a jerk. I laughed in her arms. Yeah, she really is. Once things back home were sorted, Annie booked our return tickets. Before we left, Annie's friends held a farewell party. Ben, the groom from the wedding, looked at me with sympathy and patted my hand as if to reassure me. How have you been feeling? Everything okay? I was stunned, confused. What happened? Ben looked awkward, realizing he'd slipped up, and retracted his hand sheepishly. I turned to Annie. She just smiled. Nothing important. If you want to know, you can chat with Ben. That's when I found out. Harry had put me online a few days back, spreading a rumor that I was a stalker and made himself out to be the innocent victim of harassment. The video was from that coffee shop. Ridiculous. Don't worry, Annie was already handling it. Harry can't cause any trouble. Annie had sued Harry with Ben as our attorney. You can relax. I've got a lot of experience in this. I made a name for myself once, and this time I'll make sure his reputation is toast. Ben was energized, and his enthusiasm amused me, lightening my mood. All right then. Thanks, Mr. Lawyer. After the serious talk, Ben chatted with me about gossip. I learned from him that Rachel had actually been looking for me for 3 years. She seriously believed I'd taken my own life, even hired a team to search for my body near the river, just because the last security footage showed me heading that way. Pathetic. Pretending to be so heartfelt. Wasn't she the one who pushed me away? Plus, I hadn't hidden my flight information. She should have found it easily. But she stubbornly thought I'd never leave her, so she didn't even consider looking. 2 months later, I got a message from Ben. He'd won the case. Harry apologized publicly and compensated me, though it was just some money. Right after Harry apologized, I sent the verdict to some media outlets, letting them spread the truth so Harry could taste what rumors felt like. I put down my phone and picked up my coat, ready to take my son to his early education class. But in the car, I saw Rachel again. It was like she lost it. She followed me abroad and was frequently near my house. I knew she wanted to make amends, but there's no turning back a wrong once it's done. We all need to move forward.